So my name is Sam Gitugo, and I'm joined by the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs, Professor Margaret Kobia. Karibu sana to Daybreak.
Thank you very much.
It's been a long time since we saw you on our screens, but finally we have you here. So I begin with the question, when you look at the operations of the ministry, where do you put yourselves in, of course, coming from a season that we had so many challenges, especially affecting the youth sector?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. First, let me start by really sending my condolences to the crash that had just happened, I think, early this morning. We sincerely feel with them, and God bless the families. Looking at my ministry and what we are doing, my ministry is in charge of public service, youth, and gender affairs. So in the area of public service, we are always struggling with how do we make public service more effective, efficient for service delivery. Public services, of course, includes all those services that are given in health, services given in education, services you get in administration. And of course, the youth agenda, which brings me here today, is one area that is not just a Kenyan issue, it's a regional issue as a continent. We are always struggling with how do we find employment, jobs, and how do we solve the problems confronted with the youth, because youth make almost, those who are 35 years and below, almost 60% of the Kenyan population. And if that population is not well equipped to be a productive members of their families and their society and the community, we are likely to have not a very good future. And of course, then, so we deal with the youth empowerment programs in the ministry, and that is the mandate of the ministry. And of course, as a ministry, our core responsibility is to come up with a policy framework, especially to guide youth program in empowerment. And many times, if I was to be measured, I will be asked, how many policies have you put on the table to address the youth problem? And how many have you reviewed? How many are you being implemented? Because you realize also in the youth space, there are many players. And unless we have a coordination framework, then we may not be able to measure progress. Then we have the State Department of Gender Affairs, very, very critical. And many times gender affairs seem to wear a women's face. But let me tell Kenyans, gender affairs means both men and women. However, since we have been really participating in affirmative action for women, we tend to feel more women program, but at the same time, I think what Kenyan government would want to see is both empowered woman or man, both socially, politically, and economically. So when you look at the youth agenda, like we have a country that's still struggling with unemployment situation. I don't know that the figure has changed, but the last time I checked, it was about 17% of unemployment. What specific initiatives are we taking? Because every other year we are having graduates leave the universities or different colleges, but they end up looking for jobs that they cannot make. What do we do to create employment faster than the population growth or the youth that are leaving schools? Thank you very much, Sam. As a government, I think the whole youth issue really takes a central stage in terms of development. Therefore, if you look at the Vision 2030, which aims at making Kenya newly industrialized, having high quality of life with a sustained economic growth of 10% by year 2030. Within that framework, because that really paints the kind of quality of life Kenyan government would want to see in its population, therefore you try to fit other policies, program within that framework. And in the area of the youth, where my ministry, the State Department of Youth, we also have what we call National Youth Empowerment Plan, 2016-2021. This particular plan fits very well within the Vision 2030 because we are trying to find out, in order to address the youth problem, with the problem being unemployment, health issues, drug and abuse, and many other myriad problems that the youth out of school that try to face. then we try to see how can we address this problem. And to be able to address this problem in a structured way, then we need a plan. And last year, we did come with a youth empowerment strategy, which will try to look at the policy and the legal framework that we need to enable us to address the youth programs, which means the policy now that we are developing, we need to remind ourselves, right in 2007, we had a youth policy. However, with the coming of the Constitution 2010, then we find the youth policy then needed to be reviewed so that it can take into account the many demands of the Constitution 2010 in terms of like the Bill of Rights and how do we, if we have a big population of the youth who are not really kind of finding some employment, and even also finding some values and beliefs, because the way families, the way nations have been involved, there have been quite a number of rapid changes that give challenges to the youth to find some employment. Therefore, we have said we have a policy. This policy will be developed in a very participatory manner, because we also don't want to say or prescribe this is what you do as a youth.
Okay.
We want to hear from the youth. In fact, right now in my ministry, the Secretary Youth is about 35. Because sometimes we have been saying, does the ministry really understand the demands of the youth? And we have found one of the ways to do that is to involve the youth by having them in the ministry so that they can be able to work with other sectors that are working with the youth, especially private sector, faith-based. I spend a lot of time in faith-based organization where they are also addressing and their program for the youth. Then we have the leadership and the participation. We are saying in that plan, unless youth are engaged, unless they participate in the program that we are intended for them, then even ownership and implementing will be difficulty.
So, Waziri, so quite elaborate in terms of policy and the framework that you have, but how do you now cascade it down to the young people who are leaving school or they're within school to feel the impact of the kind of work that you're trying to do now?
I think the plan I was just articulating, it reaches out all the youth in terms of, if you are talking about youth leadership and participation. If you are taking out this particular policy, there is no way you are not going to reach those who are in high school, those who are in universities, and in particular we also have specific program addressing specific needs. Take like skill development. We have what we call Kenya Youth Employment Program, which is funded by the World Bank and the Kenya government, where we try to reach out youth who have actually from 4 kind of education and primary kind of education and even dropouts. Because we are saying these youth belong to Kenyans, and they must have dropped out of school for one reason or the other because of hardship areas, maybe where they come from. So this particular program, Kenya Youth Employment Program, targets about 280 youths. But you can, for 5 years.
280,000.
280,000. That is a small number compared with the 5 million Kenyans youth who are out of job every year. But I think it also gives us a beginning point, because this program, which is looking at standard 8 dropout, standard 8 graduate, form 4 graduate, not beyond that, they are taking them through a training. They ask them what kind of training they would want to do, especially vocational. And when they train them, they give them internship, and then when they finish, I think the good and the value addition for the Kenya Youth Employment Program is it gives them a little grant to go and start a business. So that is one category. But you also know not every youth can go into entrepreneurship or start a business. Then you have seen what the government has done when it comes to technical, vocational education and training, which now you can see the kind of resources, the kind of equipment, the kind of upgrading and the training of the instructors of what you would call polytechnic institution in this country, national polytechnics, and in every county now there are those training institutions to give vocational training to the youth. Therefore, that is open, and we are telling parents and the youth themselves that the model that we always had, go to school, get good grades, and get a job, is no longer sustainable. But if you understand technical skill, maybe in masonry, in plumbing, in electrical technician, in hairdressing, in anything that you can do with a technical or vocational skill is the promise of the future for the jobs.
But how effective is that conversation? Because in this country you still see, like even 2018 when the KCSE results came out, you see that children who are very disappointed on the grades that they scored because they still want to transition to the university. But practicality has shown that university education does not mean a successful life in getting a job or getting to execute certain things for livelihood.
I think we now know better that going to university to get a degree does not necessarily promise a job. Therefore, but traditions die hard. This is the way Kenyans have always been told, because we know the critical role of education. The model was always prescribed, if you go to school and get good grades, you'll get a good job. The youth is getting disappointed because they have seen people who are going to the university come back at home. They are not able to get in employment. They are not able to engage themselves in any productive area. Therefore, that change of attitude is also something very critical, which are also engaging the Kenyan population. And especially when we go out to the field, we are always appealing to the parents that say, yes, I can go out to the university, but the vocational training institutions that have come hold the promise for the future. So even if I'm going to university and I've gotten a BA, there's nothing wrong going to a polytechnic near me. And now the government has given a lot of grants, and even help is giving loans to those who are going to these village, national polytechnics. So people, Kenyans now need, youth included, they need to ask themselves, what do I need to do to be able to generate some income through some vocation? Okay,
so I want us to focus on some 3 unique funds that are under your ministry. That is the Youth Fund, the Women Enterprises Fund, and Uwezo Fund. I don't know how successful they have been, but several times you've had reports of impropriety talking about the Youth Fund, the 180 million shillings that was stolen and investigated in the year 2015-16. Then we have the Women Enterprises Fund, and actually even the Youth Fund, there was an allegation last year in terms of misappropriation. I mean, what have you done to ensure that they are serving the interests of the young people?
Thank you very much. I think we have what actually we call generally in government Affirmative Fund. These were developed way back in 2010. And even with the current government, we have seen a lot of effort to be able to get to Exchequer to give the money to this Affirmative Fund. As you have said, we have Women Enterprise Fund, we have Youth Enterprise Fund, we have Uwezo Fund, and then of course we have National Government Affirmative Action Fund that is normally given to women rep for every county to be able to give to people living with disability, the youth and the women, and even men who may need a little fund to be able to generate, to go into business and generate some work for them. Let me start with Women Enterprise Fund. Women Enterprise Fund has done extremely well. It is a model that's where women come into groups of a certain number, and then they write a proposal what they want to do. And we have found women who have gone into various businesses, brick making, they have gone to food value addition, and they have gone to small businesses, medium and small enterprises. Therefore, it has done very well, and we have not had scandals in that fund, and it's well run. When we go in the field, we have found women who started borrowing 100,000, but now they are borrowing 750,000. And this loan is it doesn't take a lot of time because there's no collateral. The guarantee is just the numbers of the people in the group. To me, that has done extremely well. But of course, taking into account the demand, still there could be a lot of other demands, and it's what I've heard most people saying, they even want us to go to start giving them $1 million. That has done very well. The Youth Enterprise Fund, also, which has unique products in terms of, this one even gives individual youth, they need to write a proposal, be in some form of a business, and some allow me to say that if you really want to give you a loan or some funding, you don't go and look for somebody who is at home. You want somebody who have already started their small businesses because they are already clear what they need to grow their business. So that's what Youth Enterprise Fund does. And there are some of the Youth Enterprise Fund, including also women members, who also approach access to government procurement program.
Okay, before we go to that, let's listen to Edward from Eldred. Edward, good morning. Thank you for calling Daybreak and speaking to Cabinet Secretary in charge of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. What's your question?
My question is I wanted to ask the CS Public Service. Hello. I wanted to ask the CS Public Service.
Yes, what's your question? Go ahead.
About the technical trainers that are being recruited. I wanted to ask why has he allowed the board of directors to recruit and yet they are not fully constituted? We would have preferred if the Public Service Commission had recruited.
You're talking about the Public Service Commission?
We are saying the government has advertised 1,000 technical teachers trainers. And apparently in the advert, like they are giving power to the board of management for the polytechnics and TTIs. The people at the ground are asking why is he allowing them to recruit? Is that not going to allow corruption or the unqualified people to be recruited? We will have preferred if Public Service Commission had recruited directly from Nairobi.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Edward. Please stay on the line to hear your question. On your screen. So he's asking about the recruitment for technical and vocational education training institutions, and he claims that the boards of management are the ones that are steering this process of procurement. Maybe you can clarify that, because he's asking why can this be done by the Public Service Commission?
Thank you, Sam. Regarding the technical training institution, which are under transition, and also you may realize they have a rapid growth, and they are experiencing some shortage of instructors. And what some of the Ministry of Education has allowed them to do is to give kind of, because they are the ones on the ground, to give kind of a temporary employment where there is a shortage. And I think the way the act is and the law, it is allowing the board of governance or the board of management to be able to identify as per the needs in a particular institution and their affordability as a stopgap measure, while the government is kind of training more instructors to hire within a short time. Even the TSC itself, it allows board of management to hire a few teachers just as a way of complementing what is going on. So it is not illegal, and it would be unfortunate if there would be some corruption arising from that. But if there is evidence where corruption has occurred, I think that needs to be investigated if information is given. So it is not like that's what should be happening, but the law allows them for that short term to have a few instructors working with the institution rather than have students in school, and then you have no instructor for missionary, plumbing or something. So it's a stopgap measure.
Okay, all right. Before we take another call, I want now to introduce the topic about the National Youth Service, and this is an institution that for the past few years has been bedeviled by claims of impropriety. We had the case during your predecessor, Cabinet Secretary for Devolution, that time, Anno Iguru, 791 million shillings was reported to have been stolen. There is currently a case in court about 468 million shillings. Your Principal Secretary has since been removed from office. So the investigations are continuing. Yet we now learn of the National Youth Service Act that was passed sometimes last year to provide for the National Youth Service to become a corporate entity, to be managed by a council, and the council has to have 12 members, and the Cabinet Secretaries to approve key decisions. How far are we in implementation of this new act?
Thank you very much. Of course, Kenyans are reminded of when National Youth Service, a very noble institution that is supposed to provide an opportunity for the youth to get some skills, and also an opportunity for the youth to serve their country in any task of national importance. Therefore, when National Youth Service was confronted with problems regarding the structure, regarding the financial management operations, the government came in a way to come up with an act of parliament, which with the support of parliament, support of government, was read by December 2018. Of course, some making a law is very political.
Right.
because you have to take care of every interest. But I'm happy to report that now we have the Act, and the Act is already operational. It was gazetted to be operational from 1st February, and a council has been established, a council with a chairperson and 11 other members. I think, to me, that is one of the deliverables of the ministry, because with now coming of
the council is in office?
The council is already in office. They have gone through induction, and they have taken over the running of the institution.
Okay.
So what is likely to happen? The misappropriation of fund and maybe the use of resources within the institution are now going to be streamlined. The council has come up with a work plan for 6 months. What is this they are going to do within 6 months? And one of the areas they have said they are going to do the oversight in terms of making sure the audit function of the institution is carried on, and now the supervision that the ministry was doing, and when the PS in the Ministry of Public Service was oversighting the DG of National Youth Service, definitely we find the PS might not have all the time and is alone. Now we have a full board that will provide the oversight. It is the right structure for the governance. Therefore, with their 6 months plan, where they hope to put the structures, the policies, and implement the PFM Act as it is, and regulation as it should be, we have a lot of hope that the National Youth Service will serve for the purpose it was intended to. And more youth, at any time, we have about 30,000 youth being trained. These youth come from every corner of this country. So it's not just training them, but also kind of an avenue for national unity, because you are bringing all these youth from all corners. Let me also point, inside National Youth Service, there are a lot of equipment and machinery.
Right.
And that's why you find they are able to do like disaster management. They are there to do roads. They are there to help communities be able to do some development project. Therefore, it provides an avenue for how youth can be made more useful within the nation and within the communities. So I can tell you, National Youth Service now is restructured, organized, and is fit for purpose.
Okay, fit for purpose. And CS, you've spent some time, obviously, to review the programs of that institution and what they have been doing over time. So when you look at it, how much money might you have lost over the past few years?
I may not have the actual figure, because many times, of course, we have seen some cases, like in the 791,000 that was lost earlier. It is still a matter in court, and sometimes until the evidence is brought and determined, I may not be able to comment on the figure. The recent one, where we had a lot of media saying about 9 billion, 10 billion, we from the ministry, we are not able to place a finger on those billions. However, about 460,000 is what people are in court, and the matter is also going on, but it should not be more than 500 million. Which, of course, is regrettable. We are not even supposed to lose a shilling.
That's right.
But sometimes the one of the problem some of the organizations are faced with are corruption, and of course corruption, we all need to fight it. And if anybody is found to have misappropriated public funds, definitely the law takes its course. And for us in our ministry, if you are found to have just even to be under investigation, we have asked them to be at home because it's very serious. So while the matter is being investigated and going through court.
Right, and before I leave that topic, I know there are reasons that informed the new act that is now in place, but when you look at the previous structure, what was so wrong? What were these weak links that would have a person to the position of a principal secretary involved in such kind of allegations? Like, how much power did they wield to influence procurement processes of the institution?
One, the budget was given to the ministry, not to National Youth Service. Therefore, the Director General as National Youth Service, if you wanted to procure anything, they would have to go through PS in the ministry. That already provides a weak link, because the DG can only use the money allowed by the PS. There could be a tendency when the money is with the ministry, if there's a shortage of maybe they need to procure something, you're using that money, which was intended for National Youth Service rather than take. So you can already see a weak structure. Two, And DG cannot be oversighted by one person. That governance structure doesn't work. Therefore, even when the institution was no longer complying with the procurement procedures, there's nobody who came to point that early enough, which means there had been weak control system in the institution, yet nobody had been able to identify until things went that wrong for us to have lost so much money.
Okay.
So that is one of the biggest problems, which we think now with the council, the council will be able to have the committees that can be able to work around, maybe audit committee, human resource committee, finance committee, and then they'll be able to report to the council the decisions of the and the recommendation of the committee. So we are thinking that with an improved governance structure, with the clear reporting structures, the National Youth Service is going to be the only institution that will be able to reach the many youth as compared with other efforts from other partners.
What is the current budget of NYS 2018-19?
I think you remember the current budget, the budget of National Youth Service even used to be as much as 24 billion.
Yes.
But after we kind of lost the money and the publicity, the negative publicity that we got, the government, the parliament, actually not the government, is the parliament, actually reduced that budget by 8 billion. So now we are talking about maybe 12 billion.
12 billion shillings.
12 billion, and at any time we have about 60,000 servicewomen, servicemen serving in 22 stations of National Youth Service and the operational. I
take an interest in this budget because at 12 billion shillings, you're also saying that in their reorganization, because it's a corporate entity now, they should have the opportunity to engage in entrepreneurship and commercial activities. When you look at the income that can come to that institution, where do you put it? And is the institution now able to absorb the entire 12 billion shillings in a year?
I think the institution has now the capacity to be able to absorb or to build the capacity to absorb the 12 billion. If you look, one of the strategies they want to undertake is commercialization of their products and operations.
Yes.
For example, if they were to go out there and do boreholes, they would need quite a lot of resources to maintain those materials and the machines and equipment. So, and if they were to go there and do large-scale farming, I'm sure they would generate, like we have just launched potato seed production in our NYS Tumaini Nyandarua. That is going to be a huge sector, I mean, to contribute towards potato growing in this country and production. Therefore, and using the farms that they have, like Tumaini has got 650, we have Yala, they have a lot of land, and taking into account the requirement to improve food productivity and mechanizing agriculture, they have the capacity to utilize that. And even if today they don't have that capacity, the council now, which is more like oversight, and the ministry also coming in, because ministry can only come with policies, but the implementation, the doing, is done with institutions below the ministry. Therefore, it is possible. And I have confidence they should be able to absorb the 12 once. But right now, you know, the 12 is also not there. We need to go back to Parliament and demonstrate to the Committee of Security and Labor Relations that oversights us, that now we need our supplementary budget. We have put it in the supplementary budget, which I'm sure they are going to discuss next week. Then they can give the National Youth Service the budget that they require. Some know that if they don't get this budget, then we will be having equipment and machinery that is lying down there without being fully utilized. So there is the need for budget, and we have appealed to them. And His Excellency the President has been very supportive in terms of making sure this reorganization, restructuring, and now complying with all the regulations that are required. He has really been really keen to see that the National Youth Service will be able to deliver to the youth of this country as far as empowerment is concerned. Okay, Wazir, as we begin to wind up, I want to focus on the third pillar of your ministry, that is gender affairs. And in this country, is it last week? Yes, last week, Parliament was unable to pass the gender bill that would essentially enact the gender rule that at least at least a third of where the gender is represented in elective positions. First of all, how do you receive this news, and where do we go from here? Sam, you know, the gender rule was going to Parliament for the 4th time. And it was disappointing that we already started seeing by the 4th time that it was not going to pass. But we want also to say the two-thirds gender principle is not like a women affair only. This is constitutional. This is what the Constitution said. Elected position and appointed position, you need to have at least two-thirds. In the appointed, we have satisfied that. It's only in elective, and from my view and that of the ministry, elective is very critical because this is where decisions are made. Therefore, the fact that it did not go through, that means we have even a higher resolve as a department to go back to the table and see if that approach did not work, what other options should we have? Because we don't want to go back to the parliament, because we are in a very patriarchal kind of environment. Therefore, we are regrouping again and look at what other options do we have to be able to come up with. In fact, we will be, because we already have two-thirds with us.
Yes.
We will be campaigning to have 50-50. Countries like Rwanda, Namibia, and this is more like if it comes to constituencies. Can we really have 50% men, 50% women? Why am I saying that? Because if it is designed like that, that's the only way we can get a better representation. We have seen where women are nominated, there has also been a criticism that the people are being nominated that are not capable. Then that doesn't also work very well for women, because when you go to parliament, you are nominated and you don't have the capability, then it's even those who are nominated, what have they done? The others who have done very well, who are nominated, they got the feel of it, they got the experience, and they have come back as members of constituency, elected. So the theory is there is something worthy and valuable to nominate. However, let's also stop nominating women. Let's go and give them a constituency to run, and when they win, they come to parliament. So I'm one person who is proposing, why can't we have the 47 counties divided into, every county we have 2 women elected, we have 2 men elected. So we'll just get immediately therefore. How we work around that.
You would wish to see a reorganization of the constituencies so that the 47 counties are the constituencies, each contributing
a certain number, 50-50 of it and gender, and we get to the parliament at that. That is one of my proposals. Of course, there are others who are thinking through political parties, that reorganization also can be achieved, but actually we would want now, not the two-thirds, to want 50-50.
I find that interesting because, Waziri, the law provides for at least a third, and now you have your ideas here. Parliament has been unable to pass that legislation several times now. So how do we entrench, for instance, this suggestion that you have? How do we entrench it?
First, we also need to know that we have an option to go to court, and I think the matter is in court now because we have failed to satisfy the two-thirds principle. So that's one option to pursue through court system to get fair justice on that. But on the 47, after we have won the Constitution for nearly 10 years, we will review it. I mean, the provision for review is there, and in the reviewing of that, we'll see what has worked for us, we should keep, what has not worked, like the two-thirds gender principle has not worked, and we can propose in those review and amendment, or even if it means a referendum, the women of this country are ready to think that they are ready for 50-50, because even the government and all of us understand the critical role women play in socio-economic development of this nation.
Okay. There's someone here who is asking that, this is Godwin from Karen. How are the good morning. Where is that question? Professor Kobia wanted to explain about procurement in government. Please let her explain. That is the access to government procurement opportunities by the young people, that in 2013 the president announced that at least 30% of procurement opportunities would be left to the young people, women and persons with disability. I don't know how much progress we've made so far in terms of the volume of trade that has gone to this special group.
The access to government procurement has really been successful in the sense that women, youth, and the people living with a disability know 30% is reserved for them in government procurement. 30% is a huge budgetary allocation. Therefore, one of the problems we have been encountering is where the youth and the women don't seem to have the information how to access the ACPO. And that information is available through Women Enterprise Fund, Youth Development Enterprise Fund, also the county commissioners and Uduma centers. They are giving information around that because women and the youth, you need to recognize that information is power. So if you hear about Agipo and you don't know how the process of getting it, then you lose out. But those who have gone out to access, in fact, in Youth Enterprise Fund, if you get the Agipo procurement or the tender of Agipo, you can come back to the Youth Enterprise Fund and they will fund it to 70%. So it's such good news that if you go access it and be able to get 70% from the Youth Enterprise Fund. Of course, there are some who have been complaining that sometimes maybe there are complications in how they feel they perform, but in wound over, if you really want something, you have to go out and look for it.
Right.
You have to see what does it take for me to get the Agipo, including your capacity building, and we have had like Women Enterprise Fund, Youth Enterprise Fund, through Business Development Services. They have been giving all this information. But let me say, I'm quite discouraged. Many times I go to any forum and ask youth, how many of you have heard about Agipo? You see very few hands. Most of them opted to complain how they have not heard about it, and I said, now that you have been in this forum, then you have heard about it. That's why you see what we call Uduma Machinery.
But their fear sometimes is they feel that there's a preferential treatment of certain people based on the person you know in government. I
don't think so, because out of the 47 counties, it can't be the people you know. But have you gone to the website, filled this information form, and then asked for it? Remember, even when we have been going through Uduma Mashinani, including Raisi Mashinani, being able to take services closer to the people, we have been giving information, and you can see how those meetings are attended by big numbers. So through those people who attend those meetings, one of our goal is to sensitize, to give information, so that if you are a parent, you have come to this meeting, you know how to access Agipo. You can go and tell your children or the youth how to access Agipo. But I think in Kenya, we have a tendency of not doing much about getting information, because the information is what will make you make a decision of how you can be able to empower yourself politically, economically, and even socially.
Okay, so let's take a look at some of the feedback that has been coming through Citizen TV, at Citizen TV on Twitter. That is the problem, this is Washington, the problem with these and other governments that have been there before is sweet rhetoric with no action. Good plans on paper with zero implementation. Next we have, this is who? Washira Wamboi says that a youth fund no longer gives youth IPO funding, LPO rather, local purchasing order funding, since she joined the ministry. That's you. I don't know what you have to say about that. Then Global Youth KE says that I asked the CS how they select the youth who take part in the policy development. Which one do you want to start with?
Okay. Let me start with the last one. How do we select youth who take part in the policy? I think youth are structured in faith-based. We have a group from faith-based who will tell us these are the youth we work with, and we forward them to come and participate in the open forum of the policy. Youth working with the KEPSA, that is the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Youth working in the universities. Therefore, it cannot be a youth who is not in any structured way. But even when we put it on the website, that is open for all the youth, and we have had almost 10 forums recently to sensitize people on the policy, not even, and to hear their comments. And the National Youth Council has also, so I think, in my view, we have been very, very inclusive, participatory in reaching out to the youth. But of course, normally when you are developing a policy like that, you can't include everyone. But you have a representative through the structures that they participate in.
LPO financing?
The LPO financing, that's why I said that when you have a tender from Agipo, you can go to Youth Enterprise and fund and then be able to finance it 70%. So there is that, besides, of course, any other loan that you may get from the Affirmative Fund.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Cabinet Secretary. Of course, so many questions coming through on text on 2242 as well as on Twitter, Citizen TV Kenya, and some of them are also tweeting you. So I'm sure we'll be looking at that and just get a feel of the concerns among the young people. Thank you for making time for us and for that conversation about the gender, public service, and also youth affairs.
Thank you very much. Allow me just to say one area that youth have been very concerned regarding they are being asked for experience when they look for jobs. And I would really want to appeal to youth of Kenya. experience does not mean working with the government or working in an organization. When people finish school, even being able to volunteer through a community, and some of them might tell us, oh, I don't have transport, but there's a church near your home. There's a primary school near your home which you need to work, there's a chief's camp. So when we interview people, especially when I'm in Public Service Commission, we are looking for a youth who has gone an extra mile to do something, even voluntarily. So this experience is not necessarily tied to being employed in government or an organization. It's being able to offer one for service.
All right.
Thank you.